Hello Matthew, this is a testing of your 3UZ LS430 2000 to 2003 right-hand drive manual harness. So first thing we'll do is we'll cut through to show you guys the build process and see what it looks like as it's built up. So we'll do that now and come back in a second. Bear with me. Right, so that's all that done, so you can see what it looks like underneath there. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go through the entire harness, how it routes on the engine, so you know where everything goes, you know where everything plugs in. Obviously everything is all labeled for you, so don't worry too much about it. You can't really get anything wrong because they're all labeled to exactly where they should go. Once we've done that, then we'll come back and we'll go through the wires in the fuse box that you need to connect, which is basically part of this welcome pack, which you'll receive with the harness. Then once we've done that, we'll do all the testing. So we've got a whole list down here, which I'll go through the time just to tell you what exactly we're going to test and how we're going to test it. So to start off with, the harness itself, obviously nice and easy on the interior. You've got the 3 plugs that go to the main engine harness over there. You've got the section which comes out and goes to the fuse box over there. All the plugs in the fuse box are different sizes, so you can't plug one into the wrong space. Then you've got the body plugs of the ECU, so that's these 2 over here, and coming out of here you've got the branch that goes to the fuse box over there, and we've got the pedal harness that comes out over here to a 6-pin DTM plug. From the fuse box you've got the plug that you are going to wire into your vehicle, and then we've got the plug here which has the OBD2 connector on so that you can obviously read all your live data, which is part of what we'll be doing today. Right, so coming along here, you're going to get to your firewall grommet. You'll see we haven't shrunk that down so that you can adjust this as to wherever it's going to best suit in your particular vehicle. So that's nice and easy. Coming up along here, you're going to get to your molded boot, T-piece boot. And coming out of here, we've got the coil grounds, which are going to bolt down over there. Coming out this side, we've got the sub harness. That's the one that goes underneath the intake. I've got photos there at the end so you can see what it looks like underneath there. Then we've got the injector and ACIS sub harness, which again goes underneath there, and obviously comes out over here and goes to all the injectors and the ACIS system underneath. Again, I've got a video on how to install that, so please have a look at that when you come to install it. And then obviously we've got the other ground, that's the main ground for the engine harness coming out, and it bolts into the same place as the other one over there with the M6 bolt that goes over here. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll start going on this side over here. So for starters, we're coming out here. This first breakout at the boot will have your coil 7. So obviously this is the left bank. So this is 1, 3, 5, and 7. That's your right bank, and that's 2, 4, 6, and 8. Okay. And then coming further along there, we've got another breakout over there, which is going to break out to your cam sensor for your VVT. And then obviously you've got ignition 5 and ignition 3 coming out there. And then like I said, they are all labeled so you don't get them mixed up. Coming along further here, we've got the other breakout towards the front, and that's going to have your coil 1. That's also going to have your oil control valve for your VVTi solenoid over here. And also what breaks out is your cam sensor that goes over there. You should have a mounting point, so you can either put a P-clamp or cable tie it onto there to keep it in place. For these ones over here, we're just advising to use P-clamps on the covers here. That'll just hold the harness out of the way down here like this. Coming down here, you'll see I've just made some sort of temporary clips over there, but basically that's how it'll go there. So it'll clip on there like that, come down through this hole over here, and then you'll see it'll come down here through the second hole. Obviously there's no aircon pump here, but it'll come through the second hole over there, and then there's your crank sensor over there, and there's your oil pressure sensor over here. Okay, right. And then also coming off this branch over here, you've got your lambda sensor. So they usually come out the back through there. We're keeping them away from the exhaust. So if you guys don't put heat wrap or anything on, it's not a problem. That can also squeeze through there, come out here, and then plug into the lambda sensor right over there. Okay, so that's that side completely done. And then coming along over here, so again, you have your branch coming out of the back there. You've got a breakout over here, and on this breakout, you've got another ground, which is going to come around and bolt onto this cylinder head over here, again with the M6 bolt over there. Then coming out here, you've got your coil 8. Coming further along, you've got your second breakout, and that's going to give you your cam sensor on this bank, and then it's going to be your coil 6 and your coil 4. Okay, and again, just use P-clamps on the physical cover itself, and then that'll keep that all nice and tucked away over there. There is also another mounting point here as well, which you can use on a P-clamp over there and hold everything nice and tight together. Right, coming to the front here, there's a bit of a quite a big breakout over here. So we've got the coolant temp sensor, which is over there. We've got the throttle sub harness plug, which is over there. We've also got the oil control valve, which comes out here, and then we've got your coil number 2, which comes out there. And then we've got your mass airflow sensor, and obviously we've got yours plugged in for testing just to make sure everything works. And then coming down here, we're going to have a harness section that comes down there. We're going to break out there, and then you're going to go off to your alternator sub harness. So obviously these are sub harness now, so you could change alternators and just plug the plug back in. And then coming down to your O2 sensor over here. So remember, on the 3UZs, this side has a long sensor, which reaches all the way to the front, and the other side is a short one. Just bear in mind the wiring is different between the long one and the short one. I only mentioned it because I had a customer who said, oh, I'll buy a long one and keep it as a spare for both. You can't do that. This is different wiring from the other side. So if you plug a short one into this one, it's not going to work. Okay, just a piece of useful information for you guys. Right, so that's the whole harness and how it routes. Obviously, we've got no gearbox section or anything coming out the back here because it's for a manual setup. So let's go back over to the fuse box, and what we're going to do is we're going to go through just explain the wires here. This is pretty standard. We've sort of standardized the plugs, so I'm just going to go through them. They're really nice and simple to connect. You've got your red 14 gauge wire. That's going to be your permanent 12 volt supply. Make it a permanent 12 volt supply. The ECU requires a permanent 12 volt supply to store code, so it'll make diagnosis very difficult if you connect that to an ignition source. Every time you cut the power, ECU will reset, and if you're trying to do codes and diagnose problems, big issue. Next one is your gray, and that's a 16 gauge wire. That's for your fuel pump. Your fuel pump is controlled via the ECU, and there's a relay in the fuse box for it, so you can connect that just literally directly to the 12 volt side of a fuel pump. If you feel that it's not beefy enough for your fuel pump, then by all means just use that as a 12 volt trigger for another relay, which you can fit in the boot with your fuel pump. That's no problem at all. Right, so going on to the next ones down here, we've gone through the red, we've gone through the gray, we've got black and yellow. Now that is your starter, so that just needs a 12 volt supply to crank the engine over. Then we've got your yellow and your green, which is over here, and that's your coolant temp. So if you have a look over here, we've got a little loose wire over there, just so that you can basically plug in a temp sensor if you need to. Okay. Then we've got the gray we've been through, then we've got the yellow and red. So the yellow and red is a check engine light. You'll see it's connected to our cluster here, so we're going to use that to demonstrate that that's actually working. Then after that, we've got your yellow, so solid yellow color, and that is your tacho, and again, that's connected to that so that we can obviously see the tacho signal come through over there. Then we've got your black and your red, so black with a red tracer, that's your ignition 12 volts. So just remember, this needs to go to an ignition source, so it needs to have 12 volts both when ignition is on and it's cranking. If you connect it to an accessory part of an ignition barrel will obviously cut power when you're cranking, which will then turn everything off and it won't start. Okay. Then we've got pink and blue. That is your alternator charge light. So we've connected up to 2 LEDs over there, which we'll go through as well in a minute. And then we've got yellow and black, which is connected up to the other LED over here. So I've got 2 of them over there, and that's for your oil pressure switch. So that's obviously going to work when you have oil pressure, and your light will go off when you have oil pressure and come on when you don't. All right, so it's a simple switch on that one. Right, so that's all the wires you need to connect over there. So again, very simple and straightforward. Technically, the only ones you really need to connect are just the power, fuel pump, starter signal, and ignition. The rest are all just sort of lights and stuff for your dash. You don't have to connect them up if you don't want to. Regarding the check engine light, we have put one in the fuse box. So obviously if you don't wire up the check engine light and you're getting it started for the first time, you can actually see that the check engine light is coming on and the ECU is turning on. So that's why we put that in there for you. So yeah, that LED is not there. It's not meant to be a fuse. That's meant to be an LED. So you can just leave that as it is. Right, so in terms of testing, what are we going to do? First thing we're going to test is all the dash lights. So we're going to make sure like the check engine light comes on there. We're going to make sure both the LEDs come on to make sure the oil and alternator are working. When we start it, they'll go off. So we'll check those over again just to make sure they do turn off when it started. OBD2, so we're going to plug in our device here to make sure the OBD is working and we can see all the live data from there. And then fuel pump, we can go into our device here and actually activate the fuel pump. So we'll make sure that's all working. And obviously when we start it, the fuel pump must be working because it started. And you'll see that basically the reason these gray and red are out is because I'm connecting power in directly into there, so I can make sure the whole system works as it should do. Right, then we're going to actually run the vehicle. And so part of that is going to be a few tests. Obviously the starter, pretty straightforward. If it starts up, we know that works. Then we're going to test the drive-by-wire. So we've got your pedal over here all plugged in. So we're going to make sure that that works as it should do. We're going to test the VVTi solenoid. So what we do is we go into the machine and then it basically retards the cams and it sounds already lumpy and stuff. And we do it on both banks to make sure that both oil control valves are wired up properly and working correctly. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go around the harness and we're going to basically unplug injector one by one, and you'll hear it misfiring as we unplug it one by one. So make sure all of those are firing as they should do. And that'll obviously form part of the coils as well, because if we hear it misfiring, we know the coils and the injectors are working fine. The ACIS, which is this little valve at the back, I do have a video on that if you want to go into much more detail about how exactly that works and what it does. But that should obviously go from this upright position to this closed position as soon as I start up the engine. Okay. Then what we'll do is we'll go back to the machine and make sure we've got no codes, and obviously that will also be referenced by the fact that we've got no check engine light while it's running. Okay. So let's crack on and get on with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the red with the black to a 12-volt source. And there you go, see straight away, I'm just going to cover the light up here for a second, but there's your LED all lit up. There's your check engine light, and you can see both of our LEDs are now on. So that's all the lights that we've provided are working as they should do, so that's absolutely fine. Again, when we started, we'll go through and actually see them all turn off. Then we're going to go over to the OBD machine, and then what we're going to do is, I'm just going to cover this light again, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to go into function, I'm going to go into system select, and you'll see that it's picking up LS430. We want to go into the engine. Right, and then we want to go into data list. And you'll see there that all the live data is going to populate. So yeah, coolant temp 27, intake air 18 degrees, throttle position 15%, etc, etc. So we've got all the live data there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to the fuel pump testing. So we're just going to go to active test. Now this is obviously a Toyota Intelligent Tester. This is not all these functions will be available on like Bluetooth dongles, just so that you're aware. It says fuel pump relay and fuel pump. I've got a video on how the fuel pump systems work if you want to go in depth onto that and why there's two different ones for that. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to turn the fuel pump on, and then you should hear the relay click. So 3, 2, 1. Just turn it off and on again a couple of times. Okay. It's a bit difficult to hear the actual fuel pump, but you can hear the relay clicking, and obviously you can see we've got fuel pressure because these screws on the fuel pulsation dampener are up, so we know we've got fuel pressure there. Right, so the next step now is we're going to start it over and we're going to run through those tests. It is very loud, it just has headers on. The GoPro seems to pick up my voice, so I'm just going to carry on talking as normal, and we're going to go through these one by one. First one will be the starter, obviously because we're going to crank it over now. Then obviously I'll just come straight over here to the ACIS. And then as part of that, I'll just go through and you can see all the check engine lights and all the LEDs and everything have gone off. So I'll just go through that, and then we'll scroll down from there. So we'll probably go from there because we've got to look at the TAC. Then we'll go through the injectors and do the VVTi solenoids and all of that type of jazz. So I'll just talk through it as we go along. I'm just going to put my ear protection on. Just bear with me a second. Right, okay, so nice and simple. Black with a yellow tracer. We're just going to give it 12 volts and she's going to start up. right. Okay, so you do have the pops and bangs map on, Matthew, so you probably hear the little pop and bang when we revved it up there. Okay, so that's all done, and what we're going to do now is I'm going to put the ignition back on. Obviously you saw we were running, we had no codes because there was no check engine light or anything on, but we're just going to go back into here. We're going to go into DTC, or diagnostic trouble codes. And we've got 0. So obviously all the automatic transmission has been mapped out of your ECU, so there's no more obviously codes and everything, and the ECU is quite happy to run without the automatic gearbox attached. So yeah, so that's basically everything. So all you've got to do now on your side is obviously there's your starter harness over there, which I've only just taped up a little bit because I don't know if you're going to need to cut it and extend it. So obviously your throttle there, and then it plugs into there and tucks away there. So that's all fine. You can take that, you can actually take that one over. I just take it over the top, but you can take it underneath as well, and whatever looks neater when you come to fit it on there. But it also means you can technically unplug the throttle and the injector at the back, and you can pull the whole intake off with the throttle and everything attached as one without having to disturb the main engine harness, if you will. Alright, but that's it, guys. If anybody else has any questions, please just let us know. But we're going to get this all boxed up and off to you, Matthew, so you can get it in your car and get it running. And for the rest of you, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.